Thanks so much for having me here. My name is Reema Selhi. I'm the Head of Policy and International at DACS, which is the Design and Artist Copyright Society in the UK. Very honoured to be here today, and thank you very much to CAMS for hosting and for all the sessions that have happened before, which have been really informative. So I'm going to be speaking about the introduction and implementation of the artist's resale right, specifically in the UK, with a focus on the effectiveness strategies. We've heard a lot about copyright for visual artists so far, so this is more particularly focused on the artist's resale right. So just to start off with an overview of DACS, who we are. We are is a collective management organisation established in 1984, so we had our 40th anniversary last year. We were established by a group of artists and lawyers because at the time the UK already had quite significant copyright protection for other types of creative repertoire, such as music and literature. However, there wasn't actually a copyright protections organisation for visual artists until DACS established the organisation. In 1990, DACS established a collective copyright licensing scheme that allowed more artists to receive royalties for the reprography of their work in books and magazines. And in the 2000s, DACS supported the campaigns for the introduction of the artist resale right. Artist resale right came into force in 2006, so next year we will be celebrating the 20th anniversary, which is very exciting. So we've had 40 years of experiencing and managing rights for visual artists and their estates, and we continue to campaign for artists' rights and work with government to ensure that copyright is protected, especially in light of technological changes, I think some of which have already been mentioned today, such as artificial intelligence. So by way of a bit of background of the artist's resale right, this timeline shows how it has developed over the last century. For DACS, supporting the implementation and expansion of ARR is very vital to our mission, especially because it ensures that artists have that fair payment, the fair compensation for the use of their work, and also share in the value of the work as it continues to be resold through the art market. So as you can see from this slide, artist resale right was introduced in France in the 1920s. It was a way to redistribute fair value back to artists and their estates when the originals were sold by the artist at a very low price, only for the resale of that original work to sell for a much, much higher price, 100 times the price years later. So the artist resale right became internationally recognized by its inclusion in the Berne Convention for the protection of literary and artistic works. This happened in the 1940s and 1948, that it was included in that convention. It's a voluntary right, which means that not all signatories to the Berne Convention have adopted the law. One of the notable exceptions is the United States, who are a Berne signatory but don't have an artist resale right in their law. Then moving forward into sort of the early part of the 21st century, a European directive on artist resale right really codified the European version of ARR. And as the UK was a member of the European Union at that time, the UK did implement the artist resale right a couple of years later in 2006. There were quite a lot of campaigns about the artist resale right at the time. Artists supported by DACS were very strong on the fact that artists should be protected by the artist resale right. However, the art market saw this as being potentially damaging to their market. And due to the very strong lobby, the UK government decided only to allow the artist resale right to apply to living artists. It wasn't until 6 years later that the artist resale right included artists' heirs and their estates, and it therefore follows the same term as copyright, being life of the artist and then 70 years after their death. The scope of ARR in the UK is quite similar to that in other European countries, being derived from the 2001 directive. But just to go through these in detail, the conditions for artist resale right to apply include the fact that the work has to be protected by copyright, and it also has to be protected by the artist resale right regulations. So in the UK, that means that it has to satisfy the test for an artistic work in the two pieces of law, which are actually slightly different to one another. In copyright law, work, which I think we've heard is quite different to the Korean definition of artistic work in copyright law, the work has to be a painting, drawing, engraving, sculpture, fine art photography, and prints. It can also include limited edition craft items such as furniture, silverware, and jewellery. So our law in the UK is quite prescriptive with a list of things that apply to be an artistic work. In the UK, ARR also applies to the resale of an artwork, of an artwork which is one of a limited number. So if you compare, for example, photography, where this might be reprinted, digital photography might be reprinted again and again and again, a limited edition is one that's made by the artist's own hand as a limited edition of, for example, 10, 15, or 20. Whilst the law doesn't specify exactly what is a limited edition, we know that this means it has to be really kind of original and authorized by the author. ARR only applies when a work is resold, so it's not the primary sale, but the secondary and subsequent sales that are relevant. And it has to be resold by a professional working in the art market, like an auction house, gallery, or dealer. The threshold for the resale is £1,000, which is equivalent to 1.8 million Korean won. And if these conditions are met, then the ARR royalty is due. These are the situations in which the ARR royalty is not due. These are the exclusions in the law. So, for example, if something is mass-produced, if it's under the threshold, also if an artist is a national of a territory with no ARR law, so, for example, if they're from the United States. Also, ARR does not apply to artwork that's sold between private individuals or by an individual to a museum. There's another particular exemption, and this was something that was lobbied for by the art market, and it's one which I think might be quite a useful exemption. It's called the bought-as-stock exemption. It applies when an artwork is bought directly from the artist, so effectively a gallery is investing in an artist when they're very young in their career, and then it's resold within 3 years for a value of £10,000 or less. So again, this is only really introduced from lobbying from the art market, just to demonstrate that the lobby in the UK was quite strong at the time of introducing this law. The key features of ARR are features which are quite different to how we manage copyright in the UK. Firstly, it can't be waived and it can't be assigned. It has to be collected by a collective management organisation, unlike copyright, which can be licensed either directly by an artist themselves or with a copyright licensing agency such as DACS. Unlike copyright licensing, the royalty can be negotiated depending on the use, but in this situation for the artist resale right, the royalty is a percentage of the sale price, and that's fixed in law. There's also a cap of £12,500 for each artwork that's resold. In comparison to the sale prices of a lot of artworks in the UK art market, this can be a very, very small fraction, about 1 to 2% of the actual sale price of the artwork. As you can see, the royalty is charged on a sliding scale. So if the work sells for up to £50,000, the royalty is calculated at 4%. The higher the value, then the lower the royalty calculation is applied. As I just alluded to, there are some comparisons to copyright licensing, which is done on either a transactional or collective basis, which I think will be quite useful to consider, especially given the conversations that we've had earlier today. The first thing to note is that what artist resale right intends to do is to compensate the artist for a resale of their original work. Again, this is really different to situations such as illustration, photography, or commercial types of artwork, where we're used to seeing them in mass media, in mass print. This is particularly about the work and investment that goes into creating one piece of artwork that once it's sold on to the art market, the artist will never see again. In comparison to copyright law, copyright gives numerous different rights, which my colleague Wolfgang earlier alluded to, such as the reproduction right, private copyright, for example, and communication to the public. Whereas the artist resale right is one specific right where you cannot negotiate the royalty, you cannot negotiate a fee, it's fixed in law. I think these distinctions are very important to consider, especially when we think about what that means then for the differences in how we administer the different rights. Moving on to the operation of artist resale right in the UK. This is an aspect of the artist resale right which a lot of the art market considered to be very burdensome. And so it's important for us to demonstrate and share that DACS has taken on a lot of that burden of operating the artist resale right and helping the art market to satisfy their needs. We send a request for information form to art market professionals 4 times a year. Art market professionals can submit their sales information online. We provide them with an online search tool that searches 150,000 artist names, and they can very easily see whether or not an artist is eligible for the artist resale right. They can calculate the amount of royalty due. They were also able to calculate an exchange rate, for example, if a sale takes place in Europe under euros. We also carry out what's called a pre-sale eligibility check, specifically for larger auction houses. So a lot of the work that DACS conducts is to really help ease the burden away from the art market professionals, such as the galleries, auction houses, and dealers. And to that end, the administrative burden on the art market professionals is very low. It's only around 95 minutes for every quarter, which is only a few hours a year. One of the challenges of administering artist resale right in the UK is that when many art market professionals were unhappy that artist resale right was coming into force, they were concerned that ARR could be damaging for the art market. And on the basis of this, art market professionals considered that DACS should not be alone in being able to collect the artist resale right royalty. They considered this would be a competitive advantage for DACS. So the art market professionals particularly decided that they would create or use one of their own sort of colleagues to create a new society, which is called ACS, the Artist Collecting Society. So ACS has been around since 2006 and is a sort of de facto competitor for DACS. One of the challenges in having two societies administering artist resale right is that it creates a confusion within the art market. It's very unclear for a lot of art market professionals, especially if they are a new gallery or a new dealer, exactly who needs to be paid for the resale royalty. It's difficult for artists themselves to understand what the difference is between the two societies. What's also quite difficult is because of the fact that artist resale right is prescribed in law, is an inalienable right, the fact that the royalty is calculated under the statute, DACS and ACS effectively offer the same service to artists. An artist has no different experience whether they are signed up for DACS or signed up for ACS. Although DACS has been in operation a lot longer and also represents copyright, DACS generally has the majority of the reciprocal relationships with sister societies. So, for example, we represent the rights of French artists in the UK for UK sales. However, ADAGP will only, which is our French sister society, will only represent the rights of UK members for DACS rather than the members for ACS as well. Another challenge is the non-notification and non-payment of artist resale royalties. It's a challenge that both DACS and ACS face, which is that art markets do not have to, are not compelled under the law to comply with their duties to disclose sales. Quite often we will find out that an artist, an art market professional has made a sale. So for example, if the artist themselves has informed us, but the artist resale right regulations don't have any specific measures within the law that allow for DACS or ACS to audit sales. So in the last year, 1,200 art market professionals were identified as being operating in the UK, which gives us an indication of how many sales are being made. Nonetheless, in the last year, 1 million of our 8.8 million distributed came from the activities of our legal team in carrying out compliance measures to encourage those who would not disclose their sales to disclose them. We did that by escalating a matter previously, which led to a joint legal action between DACS and ACS against a well-known art dealer. Although this ended in a settlement, it created a lot of publicity for artist resale right, and it also encouraged a lot of art market professionals to do the right thing, knowing that the art market professional who didn't pay the artist resale right royalties that were due to artists was considered to be not a very good player in the market. We also think that that has given an understanding that DACS and ACS do have a bit of teeth and will go after non-payment of artist resale right royalties. There have been lots of claims that the introduction of artist resale right would have a negative impact on the art market, and it would also divert sales to other countries. But all of these claims have been unfounded. So the UK continues to be the largest art market in Europe. It's worth around £9 billion a year. In fact, it actually improved quite a lot since 2006, making some really record number sales just before the COVID pandemic. In 2017, a study by the World Intellectual Property Office, Economic Implications of the Resale Right in the International Art Market, found that there was no evidence of any economic harm to art market professionals. So I think it's very clear that actually introducing artist resale right doesn't deter sales, it doesn't put people off from buying the works. It's also important to know that ARR benefits a very large range of artists and heirs, and it's not just the established artists or the wealthy artists who benefit. According to our own research, each year, about 10% of the recipients of artist resale right are receiving it for the first time. So that indicates that they might be quite new to the profession or new to the secondary market, or that maybe they have been practicing for a long time and only just getting recognition. These are some statistics of the positive impact that artist resale right has on artists. It's important to note that the UK median earnings of a visual artist, which are represented on the slide in the blue on the right, is far, far lower than the UK average. Artists really are quite underpaid, often working freelance, so they don't have the kind of protections that a lot of people in employment do. Given that, some of these statistics show that artist resale right has a very good reinvigorating role to play. So artists are reinvesting their royalties into their practice, they're using it to support archival activities, and they're also often providing support to galleries and institutions without pay. So artist resale right royalties really help artists and estates do the work that allows us to all enjoy the art. I just wanted to leave a few really nice quotes from some of the artists and art market professionals that we've worked, artist estates that we've worked with. So this is from the estate of the Sir Alfred Munnings, and she's the museum director of the Munnings Art Museum. I'll read this very quickly. Artist resale right is crucial to the existence and maintenance of running a high-quality museum experience and making art available for all. The Munnings legacy, which he left to us to manage and promote, requires a lot of resources, and ARR royalties make up a third of our income. If it didn't exist, we wouldn't be able to look forward to the future the way that we currently are. This is another famous artist called David Shrigley, who has said that artist resale right meaningfully acknowledges the immeasurable value of artists to our society. Thank you very much.